Right then, Year 5, it's reading time again. So we've got the next chapter of George's Secret Key to the Universe to get through today. Last week we read through the chapter, and as a quick recap in that chapter, George had called through to see Eric, and he'd been invited in to the meeting that Eric was having with other scientists to see if they thought that they should either try and save planet Earth or look to begin life on a new planet. And in the end, because he was at the meeting, George was actually given the casting vote in this, and he was about to make his decision, and that's where we left it last time. So we'll pick up from there with today's work. So, chapter 21. George, you're absolutely spot on, Eric said, as they waved goodbye to all the scientists who were leaving now that the conference had come to an end. George and Eric went back into the library, which was covered in biscuit wrappers, half-drunk cups of tea, old biros, and conference papers folded into aeroplane shapes. We do need to work on saving this planet and looking for a new one. We don't have to do one or the other. Do you think you will? Asked George. You know, you and your friends. Do both, Oh, I think so, yes, said Eric. Maybe we could invite your parents to our next conference. Do you know, George, I heard your father talk at the climate change protest march the other day. Maybe he has some good ideas that we could use. No, don't do that, said George, panicking. He wasn't at all sure that his father would approve of Eric and his friendly scientists. I don't think he'd like that. It might surprise you, said Eric. We all need to work together to save the planet, if we're to get anything done. Now he started to clear up some of the mess that the scientists had made. They seemed to have left behind an extraordinary number of things. Jackets, hats, jumpers, even a shoe. It was also very nice of you to drop by to apologise, said Eric, gathering together a great armful of abandoned clothing. Well, actually, admitted George, it's not quite why I came round. Now Eric dumped the clothes in a corner of the room, and he turned back to look at him. I signed up for a science competition, the boy continued nervously. It's a bit like your conference, except it's kids giving the talks, and there's a big computer as first prize. I've tried to write something to say, but I'm really worried that I'll have made lots of mistakes and everyone will laugh at me. Ah, yes, Annie told me about your competition, said Eric, looking serious. And I've got something that might help you. Funnily enough, I had an idea after your comet ride. I decided to start writing a book about the universe for you and Annie. I've made some notes. They might help you with your science presentation. And he picked up a plate of biscuits. Have one of these, George. It's good brain food. So George helped himself to what was left of the biscuits. Now then, how about this for an idea, said Eric thoughtfully. If you could just give me a hand to get my library tidied up a bit, and Annie's left me strict instructions that I'm not to make the house messy while she's away, then we can talk about your science presentation, and I'll go through the notes that I made for you. Does that sound like a fair deal? Oh, yeah, said George, delighted by Eric's promise. What would you like me to do? Perhaps a bit of sweeping or something like that, said Eric vaguely. He leaned casually on a wobbly pile of chairs as he spoke, accidentally pushing them over with a loud crash, and George burst out laughing. Yes, you can see why I need help, said Eric apologetically, but his eyes were twinkling with laughter. I'll pick up these chairs, and maybe you could brush a bit of this mud off the floor. Would you mind? The carpet was covered in footprints left by the scientists, none of whom even remembered to wipe their feet on the doormat. No, also George, stuffing the last biscuit into his mouth, and then running off to the kitchen where he found a dustpan and a brush. He came back to the library, and he started to swish away some of the worst bits of dirt, and as he worked, a piece of paper stuck to his brush. He picked it off the bristles, and he was about to throw it away, when he realised that it was a letter addressed to Eric. There was something strangely familiar about the handwriting. Look at this! And he passed the note to Eric. Someone must have dropped it. So Eric took the piece of paper and he unfolded it whilst George carried on sweeping. And suddenly he heard a great shout. Eureka! Cried Eric. And George looked up. Eric was just standing there, piece of paper in hand, and a joyous look on his face. What's going on? George asked him. I've just been given the most amazing piece of information, cried Eric. If this is correct... He peered at the piece of paper again, holding it up very close to his thick glasses. He muttered a long string of numbers to himself. What is it? Asked George. Hang on. Eric seemed to be calculating something in his head. He ticked off a series of points on his fingers. Then he screwed up his face and he scratched his head. Yes, he said. Yes. And he stuffed the paper in his pocket. Then he picked George up off his feet and he whirled him around. George, I've got the answer. I think I know. And suddenly, dropping him again, Eric went over to Cosmos and he started typing. What do you know? Asked George, who was a little bit dizzy now. Great shooting stars, this is brilliant. Eric was frantically tapping on the computer's keyboard, and a huge flash of light shot out of Cosmos' screen into the middle of the room. And George saw that the great computer was once more making a doorway. What are you doing? George asked. Eric was strung into a spacesuit, but he was in such a hurry that he put both feet into one trouser leg, and he fell over. George hauled him up again, and he helped him on with the suit. Oh, it's so exciting, said Eric as he buckled it up. What is? Said George, who was now feeling rather alarmed. The letter, George. The letter. This might be it. This might be what we've all been looking for. But who was the letter from? Asked George, who had a bad feeling inside his stomach alloy. He didn't know why. Well, I'm not sure, admitted Eric. It doesn't really say. Well, then you shouldn't trust it, said George. Oh, rubbish, George and Eric. I expect it was written by someone at the conference who wanted me to check out the information, but using Cosmos. I expect they wanted to know it was correct before they announced it to the whole scientific community. So then, why didn't they just ask you directly? Said George. Why write a letter? He persisted. Because, said Eric, sounding just a little bit annoyed. They probably had a good reason, which I'll find out when I get back from my trip. Now George saw that Cosmos' screen was covered in long strings of numbers. What are those? He asked. That's the coordinates of my new journey, said Eric. Oh, are you going now? Asked George suddenly. What about my science presentation? Eric stopped in his tracks. Oh, George, I am sorry, he exclaimed. But I really have to go. It's too important to wait. Your talk will be fine without me. You'll see. But... No buts, George, said Eric, putting on his glasses, and then his space helmet, and then speaking into his funny little space voice once more. Thank you for finding the letter. It's given me a vital clue. But I must go now. Bye! And then Eric leaped through the portal doorway, and he was gone into outer space before George had time to say another word. The portal slammed shut behind him, and then George was left alone in the library. So that's chapter 21 of the story. There are going to be some questions for you to answer, just like last week. Questions will be coming up on screen in a moment. If you're unsure of any of it, obviously go back, watch the video again, listen again. You could always make some notes whilst you're listening to the story. You could write them down, pause the video, whatever, but use them then to have a go at the questions and see how you get on with that. We'll carry on with the story next week and look at the next chapter, but until then, see you later.